Bills Mafia, what's going on? It is Jaguars week. We are headed to London. Let's talk about that. Let's talk about the upcoming matchup and how we are going to fare. Let's get it. Bills Mafia, what is going on? Good evening. Happy Thursday. I don't know what is going on with my camera right now. I am so tiny. Welcome. It is Jaguars week. We are here. We are getting ready for the big time 9:30 in the morning matchup. That's wild. How are we doing tonight? How are you? I am glad you are joining us. I'm going to preface this and let you guys all know my 8-month-old son brought something home from daycare. So my wife and I have been sick the last couple days. My voice is hanging on for dear life. So I need all of you guys in the chat. I need you guys to keep this going for me because I'm like barely alive right now. So we're going to do this. We're going to have a good night tonight. I am so pumped you're here. I'm so glad you're here. Again, this is Buffalo Late Night here on the Cover One Sports Network. We have a great show for you. We always do. We deliver every time at Cover One. Again, I am your host, Thomas DeLoss. I am super glad that you've chosen to hang out with us tonight. Again, thank you for tuning in. Or if you're listening on Spotify, happy Friday to you. You can find our show free on all social media and streaming platforms, including Spotify and YouTube, or however you choose to pod. If you are watching on Twitter right now, come on over. Come join the conversation. All you're doing is like standing out somebody's house and watching through the window while they're enjoying dinner. Come inside, get warm, come have some fun with us. We'd love to chat with you, be part of the conversation. Also, guys, want to make sure you are hitting that subscribe button. Join the conversation. Make sure you know every single time any one of the Cover One shows is live. That'll pop right up, and you hit that notification button, and you'll be in. Now, again, guys, we are in Jaguars week. It's exciting times. And speaking about that, speaking of the fact that we're in Jaguars week, if you want the best content, if you want the best analysis, if you want the best of the best heading into the 2023 season with this 3-1 Buffalo Bills team, sign up to Cover One Pass. Sign up and get the best content delivered to you. That being said, guys, tonight we have a fantastic guest with us. We have the host of the BLEAV in Jaguars podcast on the BLEAV Network. We have Mr. Justin Dunk. Justin, what's going on, brother? How you doing?
Just kicking it with you late night. I like the vibe that's going on, Thomas. I hope you can battle through what your young son brought home there. I think you can do it. You're strong.
I'm going to pull through. I am going to do like Josh Allen with a UCL injury, and I'm going to tough through this because it's for the better of the crowd. Justin, obviously we had a little bit of time to chat, and for anybody who doesn't know, Justin also got his start doing CFL work, currently living in Toronto. So I was actually kind of poking and finding out. So Justin, why don't you, since I asked you before, why don't you explain the phenomenon of what that drop kick was to people so they understand? If anybody saw the clip, it's a drop kick basically by a CFL team. Nobody knew what was going on, but maybe you can explain it, and then we'll get into the rest of the shenanigans tonight.
Nobody knew, I think, south of the border, and it's one of those funky rules in the CFL. So last week in the league up north, Jeshrin Antwi, a Canadian running back who plays for the Montreal Alouettes, they're playing the Ottawa Red Blacks, is facing a second and 18 situation. He gets his ball swung out to the flat, and instead of trying to run for that in the CFL, there's a quirky rule where if you kick that ball with your foot and you recover it, it's kind of like you're just the punter. And you got a fresh set of downs, even though it doesn't travel the distance that you would have needed if you tried to get it in an offensive way, running or catching the football. So he did it successfully. Actually tried it one time earlier in the season. It didn't happen because the risky part of it is, right, if it goes off your foot, the other team can recover it, so it can result in a turnover. And it was actually deep in Montreal's end at the time. So he was able to do it. But one of those weird rules that pops up in the CFL from time to time that ends up going viral here and there.
It's definitely interesting. I know a lot of people watch the CFL and wonder what's going on. I know some teams, like the Dolphins, seem to be taking little cues from the motion that you're seeing a lot of times in CFL. But we're talking about the Jaguars. We're talking about London. We're talking about the Buffalo Bills going back and playing a team that has had, their number sometimes. I mean, we know last year or the year before they played the Jaguars and they just couldn't get anything going. It was a really bad matchup. Josh Allen made Josh Allen. Josh Allen made Josh Allen. That's going to be a fun one tonight to try to jump through. Josh Allen from the Jaguars made Josh Allen from the Bills' life miserable, and he has absolutely spoken on it. And we know for the fact that the Jaguars coming in the season were the darlings. They were the team that a lot of media pundits were saying that could be the number one seed coming out of the AFC. They could be the team, basically representing the AFC in the Super Bowl. Let's start right there. Justin. Through 4 weeks, what have you seen out of the Jacksonville Jaguars?
It's been definitely inconsistent on offense. And for the most part, the defense has been pretty good outside of the game against the Houston Texans, where there was some blown coverages there. But I think as CJ Stroud goes along, he's shown that even for a rookie quarterback, he's pretty legit, although it was not a great performance from the Jags defense there. That said, they were great against Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs in week 2, held them under 20 points, just 17 in that outing. Yes, Travis Kelce was kind of working back into things, but they've been really strong on defense, led by their edge rusher, Josh Allen, who's tied for the NFL lead with 6 sacks. They've really not generated much other pressure on defense unless it's been Allen and him kind of forcing the quarterback to get outside of the pocket. Trayvon Walker does have a couple sacks, but he really needs to play much better, especially considering he's a number 1 overall pick. Tyson Campbell is a young emerging cornerback. It's a very intriguing matchup, I think, for him to go up against Stephon Diggs for a number of reps in this game in London. And offensively, Trevor Lawrence has been really good. The stats don't necessarily show it, though, except for his Pro Football Focus grade. He's graded as the second best quarterback in the NFL right now, but he's had 9 drops. That's an NFL team high overall. Calvin Ridley has 4 of them. That's the most for a single receiver in the NFL. And they've just had untimely penalties, and third down conversion percentage has been a major issue for this offense. I do think there is some upside, though, there. We've seen Christian Kirk pop a little bit of late. Evan Engram is among the leaders in tight ends and receptions and yards to start the season. If they get Zay Jones back, I know Buffalo Bills fans know him well, then I think this offense can try to get in a rhythm here. It has all the pieces, but there's a bunch at play, including Press Taylor, the offensive coordinator, now calling the plays for full games.
No, you mentioned Trevor Lawrence, a guy from all the way back when he was on Elite 11 with Justin Fields. He's a guy that has been in some ways very polarizing. He's, a guy that coming out of Clemson, very highly touted for a couple of years. Everyone he was kind of the Caleb Williams of a number of years ago that everybody wanted to get their hands on. They knew he was going to be talented, and he very much is. In some ways, he's lived up to his billing. In other ways, it seems as though he's been, I wouldn't say underwhelming, but maybe not to the expectation that people anticipated out of the gates. Thus far through the first 4 weeks, obviously you said there's been some drops that have been a huge proponent of potential, errors in the games and whatnot. Now, you obviously mentioned one guy, Calvin Ridley. Obviously a guy that everybody, Jaguars fans, were clamoring for. Big suspension that came out of the NFL for betting. What have you seen? Because he obviously, out of the first week, every fantasy owner was licking their chops saying, I made the right move. This guy was getting targeted left and right. Massive, real big day for week 1. And then it's just been kind of underwhelming. What are your thoughts on Calvin Ridley? And I guess, how has Trevor Lawrence, what can he do to elevate his game going into this matchup?
Yeah, I'll start with Lawrence first because that's kind of where you went first. And I think that he's been really good here. There's just been some plays that have been literally inches away from being completed, especially in that Chiefs game and even in the Texans game as well, that could have changed things for this offense. There's been penalties that have held that offense back. So it's not Lawrence. There's been some Jaguars fans that have kind of been freaking out about Lawrence early in the season, but he's been really good. He's made a number of big time throws. That metric, according to PFF, he's right up there among the leaders in the NFL in those big time throws that are into tight windows and deep down the field. He's pushed the ball down the field at times when it's been there, and he's also taken off and picked up some first downs with his legs when it's been forced as well. As for Calvin Ridley, he had that hot start, and you're right. Everybody around the league was like, oh boy, here comes Calvin Ridley, that 1,000-yard guy that we know from the past. But I think it was interesting to see what the Colts did, especially in the second half of that game. They put Kenny Moore on him in that week 1 opening win that the Jags had, and that slowed him down. He had 7 catches for 92 yards in the first half. Moore went on him, and then he only had 1 catch the rest of the way for 9 yards. So teams are starting to put their top corner on Ridley, and at times, obviously bracketing him and trying to take him away. And I think they kind of tried to force the ball to him in week 2 and week 3, even though his target share has gone down every single week. We've seen Christian Kirk step up in terms of target share. In week 1, he only caught 1 pass on 3 targets. And in week 2, 3, and 4, he's really ticked up. So what we're seeing here, I think, is just working Ridley into the offense and how he's going to fit into everything. And I think that week 1 first half against Indy was the anomaly right now, because Ridley only had 2 catches last week. Yes, one of them was for a big, long touchdown, but that came on a broken coverage. And credit to Trevor Lawrence for eluding one blitzer on the play and then taking a shot while letting that pass go to make that TD happen. But I think that teams are starting to focus on Ridley and take him out of the offense. And this Jaguars offense, with Taylor calling the plays, has had to learn how to adjust. And Zay Jones being out of the lineup for the last 2 games, I think, has been a big issue for this offense. He's a guy that Lawrence has a lot of trust in, made a dynamite touchdown catch in that week 1 game, and then got hurt against the Chiefs. And I think this offense is definitely missing his presence, and the Jaguars are hopeful that he can be back in this game against the Bills.
Now, in regards to that, obviously with the offense, I mean, Zay Jones, we do know very well. His time wasn't as bountiful as it has been with Jacksonville. Glad to see him really kind of prospering. He had some stuff going on behind the scenes, so now that's obviously getting better. One thing in regards to this game is the Bills come in with a very, very highly touted defense. The number 2 in DVOA. They are right up there. They're the number 1 turnover team, one of the highest rated sack teams, pressure rate, havoc rate, everything you could throw. The Bills are coming in as a team that most offensive coordinators are not looking forward to looking at. The Jaguars have allowed 8 sacks thus far, and one thing that has been mentioned is Walker Little apparently is potentially moving inside to guard for this week. What are your thoughts on the offensive line? I know there's been a bit of struggle sometimes. The Chiefs sacked Trevor Lawrence 4 times, though that is the Chiefs. They're very, very good. What do Bills fans need to know in regards to this Jaguars offensive line? Are they going to be able to hold up against potentially a Von Miller added defensive line?
That could be scary for the Jags line if Von Miller's playing. To start the season, Cam Robinson had that 4-game suspension for performance-enhancing drugs. So he's going to be back this week at left tackle. That kicks Walker Little inside to left guard. Luke Fortner is going to stay at center. Brandon Sheriff at right guard. And then Anton Harrison, their first-round pick from the 2023 NFL Draft, at right tackle. So when Robinson was out of the lineup, you had Walker Little playing left tackle. And he actually played very well there. He ranks in the top 10 in a number of metrics and what he was able to do there. The tough part was Ben Barch was at left guard. He was getting pushed around a bit. Then they decided to start Tyler Shatley there last week, who's usually their backup center. And really the interior of that offensive line, especially the left guard and center spot, were weak points, I think, early on in the season. And Anton Harrison was sort of getting a baptism by fire in the NFL. Week 2, he goes against Chris Jones after the guy ends his long holdout and misses week 1. And Chris Jones is torn apart. Now, Jones had some positive words about Harrison and felt like he was going to be good as long as he kept learning, felt like he had some great athleticism as well. And I think we're seeing that. He had a much better game, a clean sheet, if you will, no pressures against the Atlanta Falcons. But that is nowhere near what this Bills defense can do, especially with Von Miller on the field. So Robinson's going to add that experience, that leadership, that athleticism and physicality to this offensive line, and having Walker Little at left guard is definitely going to help. But in all honesty, Luke Fortner has to play much better on the inside, and Harrison has to have a really good game at right tackle. Otherwise, it could get nasty for Lawrence. He took a bunch of shots last week against the Falcons, and he's kind of been doing so all season long. He's also trying to get rid of the ball. He's been doing so in and around 2.5 seconds, which is up there in terms of quarterbacks getting rid of the ball fast in the NFL this season. So he knows that rush is coming quickly because of what he's had to deal with on the O-line.
Now, based on all that, I obviously know that the Jaguars have quite the potent offense. We know that with, like I already mentioned, Calvin Ridley. How has Travis Etienne done so far this year? I know, obviously coming off, he's had a couple injuries. He's kind of had an up and down start. He seemed to be, out of the gate kind of flourishing. Do you see him having success against, again, another very, very talented linebacking crew and defensive line for the Buffalo Bills?
It is a talented defensive line and linebacking crew for Buffalo, but they're giving up, I believe it's in the range of 6 yards per carry. So that's something that the Jags need to exploit for a couple reasons, which could be obvious, right? They want to control the game, keep the Bills quarterback, Josh Allen, on the bench, tick, tick, tick down that clock, and really have the pace in their favor. Etienne has kind of gone the way of his offensive line. He hasn't had some huge lanes to run through. The touchdown run that he had against the Colts in week 1 was dynamic. It was really bottled up, and then he broke out the backside for a dynamic run there to the end zone. And last week he had a bunch of work, not a lot of yardage, but Press Taylor felt like because they stayed with it, their play action game off of that was able to do some quality things. So it hasn't been a super fast start for Etienne. It hasn't been awful either. His offensive line, I think, needs to help him out a little bit because entering last week, he actually was leading the NFL in missed tackles produced, either rushing or receiving the football with 20, and he's still up there. He has 16 in the run game. So he's done his part to make defenders miss. I think it's time for the offensive line to at least give him a little sliver of a hole more consistently.
Now, on the opposite side of the ball, obviously that the Buffalo Bills have Josh Allen and a very, very talented, litany of different weapons featuring Stephon Diggs, James Cook kind of, becoming the guy this year, and then a multitude of different guys, Gabe Davis, Dalton Kincaid, Dawson Knox, whatnot. The Jacksonville Jaguars have a couple of really nice pieces. Andre Sisco, who is starting out to have a pretty good year. You obviously mentioned Tyson Campbell, younger corner. They got Darius Williams, who's also starting out pretty well. What do the Bills need to know in regards to this Jacksonville defense? Obviously, outside of the very vaunted Josh Allen, who has made Josh Allen's life miserable. Again, very weird. How have they done so far this year in the secondary? And what do you see as their pathway to being able to stop, or maybe not stop, but slow Josh Allen down to give Jacksonville and Trevor Lawrence a chance?
Tyson Campbell is a very interesting cornerback who I think is one of the underrated corners in the league. And if he's going to have that label removed, he's going to have to step up in big moments like this going against Stephon Diggs. Darius Williams has made some plays, but he's also gambled at times and given up some big plays. They've had some coverage busts in the back end, particularly against the Texans on a couple of occasions. Tank Dell got loose for some big plays there. Sisco has been really good at safety. He's up in the top 10 graded safeties in the league at Pro Football Focus. Rayshon Jenkins has been solid, if unspectacular. So I think they have to have those four guys play really well. Trey Hernan comes in when they go into their nickel package, and he's kind of been used all over. You'll see him blitz off the edge and also obviously in coverage. So Campbell's a guy to look for who will get up and press. I'm curious to see if he'll do that against Diggs. He probably would against Gabe Davis, but we know how good Diggs is at getting off the line. And then I think you need to have better play from Jenkins in particular. Sisco's been really good. He had an interception off of Patrick Mahomes, another one last week against Atlanta, has started the season playing very well. He's physical. He can come downhill as well. So I think the two guys that need to play well, if the Jags are even going to try to slow down this Bills passing attack, are Jenkins and Williams, just because Williams has been inconsistent. He's flashed, but he's also had some plays that he wants to forget.
Now, obviously, Jaguars started off 2-2, really, really good opening day game, fumbled 2 games, and then have come back last week against the Falcons in a pretty decisive win against I don't really know what the Falcons are at this point, because I don't think they know who they are, besides Bijan being fantastic. Desmond Ridder is just a mess. They've done decent, I would say, in regards to what they've done. Their defense is keeping them in games sometimes, and it seems like other times they're getting exploited. It seems like, based on stats, that their defensive line is having a less than stellar year. How can the Buffalo Bills, and what pathway do they have to being able to come out on top of this game?
For the Bills, I think it's pretty simple, right? Just kind of keep doing what they're doing. They're in a great rhythm. Josh Allen has been, outside of that Jets game, making a lot of smart decisions. He's finding Stephon Diggs early and often, which can keep him happy, because we all know that Stephon Diggs has a big mouth and he wants the ball. And I really think the one matchup that Buffalo can exploit here is Dalton Kincaid. And the reason that I say that is because Devin Lloyd is out of the lineup for a little while here for the Jags. He was a guy that helped hold Travis Kelce to 4 catches for 26 yards and a touchdown. Yes, there was that score in there, but those are low totals for Kelce. He was right in there trash talking, being very physical with Kelce on the snaps where he had him in coverage. And Lloyd's out. He had some plates and screws and surgery on his hand there. It's mainly a thumb issue for him, so he's going to be out for a little while. And yes, Chad Muma is inside, but he ain't Devin Lloyd. So I think Kincaid could potentially have a breakout game here. I know he's been on the field for a lot of the passing plays for the Bills, and he's seen a decent amount of targets, but I really feel like that's an area that Jacksonville needs to be aware of, but that I feel like the Bills can exploit.
And based on what you've seen so far, obviously you knew the Urban Meyer experience was an experience, to say the least. Doug Peterson is obviously, he had a great time in Philadelphia. Very weirdly how it ended. What do you think so far about how he's reimagined this offense with Trevor Lawrence and all the weapons that they have, and how this defense and offense are kind of becoming one?
I really like his approach. It's very consistent. And he's not a guy like Urban Meyer that's going to be out and about and having, racy photos snapped of him in public, let's say, and doing things like drinking. That's just not Dougie P, right? He was asked about getting out to see the sights in London, and he said, well, yeah, his wife has been telling him about all the nice sights, but he's been in the film room, right? Game planning. So I really like Dougie P's approach. The one thing that I wish would happen, in my analyst on the BLEAV in Jaguars podcast, Clay Harbor, who played for Peterson in Philadelphia, agrees with me, that I wish Peterson was calling the plays. There was such a flow with Peterson and Trevor Lawrence last year, especially in the second half of the season, that I really think that is something that is holding this team back right now, especially in offense. Can Press Taylor call plays? Yes, he'll probably end up being just fine, but it's not to the level of Peterson and what he's done in multiple stops around the NFL. So I think that's something that is kind of holding this team back. But overall, Doug Peterson's message and approach is very consistent. And I think that was much needed after, as you said, the Urban Meyer experience.
Now, obviously, this Bills matchup is, probably one that a lot of Jaguars fans are, they're excited for. It's another big time game, but they're probably also not excited because they want their team to get back into, the AFC South running, and they're running into one of the hottest teams in the NFL presently. Who do they need to rely on? Who should Bills fans keep their eye on? What is the player that's the key to their victory? Who do you think needs to step up on Sunday morning to put the Jags in the win column?
There's two dudes. Luke Fortner has to play better at center. He needs to be able to establish a push on the inside. He's going to have some help from Walker Little in there at left guard, but Fortner, I think, has to have a really good game. And the other guy is Zay Jones. I really think he's been trending towards being back. It's not official yet, but the way that Doug Peterson was talking last week and even this week about Zay Jones, I think he's a major factor for this offense. I think he can definitely help them on third down. They're 29th of 32 NFL teams in third down conversion percentage. That just ain't going to get it done, especially when you're playing a team that puts up points in bunches like the Buffalo Bills. So I think Jones coming back can have a major impact. He just seems to have a great rapport with Lawrence, and that's something that's not quite there yet with Ridley, who has had some offside penalties, if you can believe it, because he's been on the line just staring at the ball and sometimes going offside, especially in that Texans game. He had a couple of drops as well. That was just an awful game, complete write-off for him. He was their lowest graded offensive player in that game. So wow. I think having Zay Jones back can sort of alleviate some of that pressure off of Ridley. And then defensively, I think Tyson Campbell needs to have a really good game going against Diggs, and they can't get jumpy, in particular Darius Williams. So I think those are some of the guys that I'd really be looking at that need to step up to give the Jags even a chance to win it against Buffalo.
Now, I'm going to ask you this just because even though you cover the Jags, I want your honest opinion. What is your prediction heading into Sunday morning?
Yeah, man, I'll always be honest. Just because I cover a team doesn't mean I'm biased in any sort of way. I was taught from a journalistic perspective coming up to always be unbiased in my coverage. And I think this is a very difficult game for Jacksonville. Yes, they've been over in London and they're adjusted to the time, and they've been there for, about a week and a half when this game's going to kick off at 9:30 a.m. Eastern time on Sunday morning. But this is a Bills team that is coming in that arguably might be the hottest team in the NFL, especially on offense. Like, oh my, this team's like averaging 41 points in the last 3 games, except for that Jets kind of anomaly, I think, in the first week. That game was just weird overall. So I think that the Bills win this game. I think it's kind of in the range of 28-24, like 31-24, unless Jacksonville's offense really kicks it into high gear. They're going to need that offense, not just to score points, and you obviously need to do that against Buffalo, but just to have some time in possession and not put their defense on the field so much. So that's kind of the game that I see it. I could even see it a bigger margin of victory for Buffalo, but there's something about this Jags defense, as you alluded to right off the top, that meeting a couple of years ago, Josh Allen versus Josh Allen, or the Josh Allen Bowl, whatever we're calling it. There's something about this scheme that I think can potentially frustrate Josh Allen, the quarterback, just a little bit, perhaps throw the Bills off this 40-point train they've been on.
For sure. Well, Justin, I truly do appreciate you spending some time tonight with us talking about this upcoming Jags matchup. For everybody watching, why don't you plug your stuff so that if they want to check out, get any more Jaguars content before Sunday morning, they can find you.
Thanks, man. Appreciate you. You can follow me at JDunk12 on Twitter. I guess we're calling it X now. And then the BLEAV in Jaguars podcast is available on all of your major podcast platforms. My analyst on that show, Clay Harbor, is absolutely unbelievable. And if you go there, he actually unveiled a unique story in our last episode. We were breaking down the Falcons-Jags game about his time over in London when he was with the Jaguars and Gus Bradley. There may or may not have been a fight that went down, and somebody was taking home somebody's girlfriend. Like, he pulled back the curtain. So Harbor's got a lot of energy. I really like working with him. So tune in there and on Twitter for all the goods about the Jags.
Beautiful. Well, Justin, again, as always, definitely appreciate it. And maybe if we see each other in the playoffs, we'll have to hook up again.
Indeed. Sounds good, buddy. Thanks for having me on.
Take care. Have a great night. Guys, that was Justin Dunk of BLEAV in Jaguars on the BLEAV in Network. Fantastic stuff. Obviously, big time matchup coming up. And one thing I will say before I go any further, because my voice is back, I mentioned at the top of the show, I am dealing with a bit of a cold, so I'm going to try to get through this as unscathed as I humanly can. My 8-month-old son brought something home to my wife and I from daycare, so we are kind of handling this in stride. But guys, obviously that was a fantastic little interview that we had with Justin. Really, really good stuff. It's a big time matchup. But before we get into that, we have a couple little things to get to. Cover One is sponsored by Underdog Fantasy. And they're excited to once again partner with the most dynamic name in fantasy football, Underdog Fantasy. If you have your one home league and that one draft each year isn't enough for you, then Underdog Fantasy is for you. All the fun of drafting your own players, but without the waivers and lineup decisions. Best ball drafts allow you to have all the fun of drafting your team, all the chances to win big, but with none of the week-to-week hassle. Use promo code COVER1 when signing up to make your first deposit, and Underdog will match that deposit up to $100. That's $100 in free play if you use promo code COVER1. Even better, Underdog's Best Ball Mania 3 contest is going to make 3 players millionaires. That's right, millionaires. $10 million in total prizes, $2 million to first, $1 million to second, and $1 million bonus to the team with the most regular season points. 3 chances to win $1 million. Sign up now using promo code COVER1 to take your chance at $1 million today with Underdog Fantasy. Guys, this matchup is huge. We're talking about a team that, this past Sunday played potentially the hottest team in football, the Miami Dolphins. Now we're the hottest team. See how that changes so quickly in the media's eye. We are now the darling of the NFL. The one thing about this matchup that I find very, very intriguing is you're talking about a guy like Josh Allen, who at one point was what Trevor Lawrence is now. Josh Allen was a guy that a lot of people had question marks about. A lot of people sat there and said, what is he? Is he the next big quarterback in the NFL? And people still have their doubts. I do. I still have my doubts about Trevor Lawrence. He's very, very talented. I'm not going to say what I think he is because I don't want to get a lot of flack and I don't want it recorded. But what I will say is Trevor Lawrence from his days at Clemson, back when he was in the Elite 11 with Trent Dilfer and John Brinkus, they watched him grow into a very, very potent, capable, mechanically sound quarterback. Nowadays, he is just the same. He's just figuring his way. He started off in his rookie season with Urban Meyer. We know how that went. We know that Urban Meyer destroyed that Jaguars team that first year. The guy was just an absolute tire fire. Terrible head coach, terrible person for that matter, it seems. I don't know why they still use him on College Game Day. Needless to say, now he's getting a fresh start under a very, very talented Doug Peterson, somebody who granted, Nick Sirianni is very smart. I'm not going to get too far down. I'll end up some other teams talk. But, Trevor Lawrence, just like Roy Collins was saying, generational talent. Trevor Lawrence was the Rasmus Dahlin of his draft, right? He was a guy that every team that didn't have a quarterback wanted. They knew he was going to be good. He was the perfect franchise quarterback, a guy that you could really build everything around, had a great arm, had it in between the ears. It's just the total package. And not that he isn't now, but he's run into some roadblocks so far. But here's the thing with this matchup. You're talking about 2 very competent, capable quarterbacks in what could be a gunslinging game. But I think what this comes down to in this matchup is the Bills' defense is going to have to come up big. I like the Jags' defense. I think they have some nice pieces, like we mentioned with Justin. They have some tight, with Tyson Campbell and why am I blanking right now? Obviously, they have Josh Allen, who is absolutely fantastic. He, has been a stud defensive end for a number of years. And they've got other great pieces. Andre Sisco, fantastic safety. I know you mentioned Rayshawn Jenkins has been, solid. His stats don't really necessarily say that, but safeties don't normally grade out always the best. So it'll be intriguing to see how he looks. But next to Andre Sisco, it probably makes his job a lot easier. What it's going to come down to is this Bills offense. And this Bills offense at this time is running full throttle. if you talk about what the Bills are doing very well, and let's get into this, is the Bills are incorporating a running offense that we haven't seen since probably CJ Spiller and Fred Jackson, and I don't even know if that was as good as this could potentially be. And that's not any slight on Fred Jackson and CJ Spiller, but CJ Spiller was kind of a one-trick pony. Excuse me. He was a one-trick pony, and then Fred Jackson was unbelievable, but I think Fred Jackson, if you look at Fred Jackson and Latavius Murray, I think they're very, very close. I think Latavius might be a little faster. He's bigger for sure. But James Cook can do more than just run outside the numbers. He doesn't have to do just jet sweeps like CJ Spiller. He can run between the tackles. He proved that. And I think adding in this run game, what that has done is it has provided Josh Allen a sense of comfort. I tweeted this out the other day that I don't think when we signed Damian Harris and Latavius Murray, we knew what we were getting. We didn't know what we were signing up for, quite frankly. But what I can tell you is we have gotten something that I don't think anybody anticipated. We have gotten a complementary running game. We have gotten three guys that work in tandem beautifully. It's a very serendipitous relationship where you've got James Cook, who has the speed and can bounce it inside. But then you've also got Damian Harris and Latavius Murray, who can bounce it inside, but also have a lot of speed and a lot of juice, especially Latavius Murray, who's 33 years old, the guy from Central New York, who has been very, very good. But if you look at the Bills' offense, what that has done, it's allowed Josh to get back under center, which we're now seeing. We've seen each week he's gone under center more and more, and I anticipate that becoming more of a prevalent thing. If you think about it, I think if Josh is able to feel more comfortable going forward, I think it's going to unlock this offense to more capabilities that we've never seen. Speaking on that, once Dalton Kincaid becomes more comfortable in this offense and Josh becomes more trusting in Dalton Kincaid, which you're seeing is happening, his target share in this offense, his target share as a tight end and a rookie tight end is the number one in the NFL. Once that becomes more potent, that's another piece of this offense. There's just so many things that this offense does very, very well that causes other teams to have to game plan and not know what they need to do. Because if you think about it, what the Bills did last year, they were trying to take the top off. And then teams put a too high safety shell up there and said, okay, Josh, beat us down below. Well, Ken Dorsey said, I got you. Brandon Beane said, I got you. And they provided all the talent in the world, and now he has everything he needs to be able to run whatever offense Ken Dorsey chooses. And right now what you're seeing, and you saw this against the Dolphins, though I believe the Dolphins' defense is honestly kind of bad, you're seeing that the Bills are able to deploy a versatile, multi-level offense, where if they decide and they want to have the safeties play shallow, they want the linebackers at the line, and they want to put 6-7 in the box, go ahead. Josh Allen will light you up over the top because we've got guys that can take the top off. Diggs did it this past week. Cater Kohu got punished for it. You've seen Gabe Davis do it many times, and he can do it as well. Dawson Knox, Dalton Kincaid have the ability, and then even Deontay Hardy if he really chose to. Or the alternative of the fact that teams are playing a too high shell and say, Josh, okay, beat us underneath, dink and dunk. And that's what Josh has done. And if you've looked, Josh now has a 74.8 completion percentage, which is the highest of his career, the highest in the NFL, and has been a talking point for NFL pundits for years against Josh that accuracy is not his forte. Well, let's speak on that. Let's talk on that. First off, completion percentage is not an accuracy metric. Completion percentage is a processing metric. It is saying, are you throwing the ball to the right place at the right time? Well, guess what? He is. He's doing it at a rate that most quarterbacks are incapable of doing, and Josh is doing it unbelievably sound. He is making throws that he should be making, and if you watch the Dolphins game, he had an opportunity when he rolled out right. It looked like he was about to throw it across his body to the other side of the field. Well, Josh Allen of the past, Sugar High Josh Allen, or whatever you want to call him, would have tried, and he has. He's done it many times. But what he did in this game was he didn't. He chose to live to see another day. He pulled it down, and he went with the better option. See, that's what makes this offense very, very dangerous. If you have Josh Allen, because here's the thing, and I've said this before, what makes Josh Allen so good now is not only that he has talent, because we know it. Josh Allen has had talent in spades. He has been, and quite possibly still is, the best and most unbelievably talented quarterback in a long time, right? He is physically gifted. He's tall. He's fast. He's got a cannon of an arm. But the big question for a lot of people was, can he make the right decisions? We saw against the Jets in week 1, it was shaky. It was questioned. He forced things. If he could figure out what's between the ears and he's able to move forward with that, that makes Josh Allen probably the most deadly quarterback in the NFL. And I don't make that as a slander against Patrick Mahomes, but Josh Allen is a nightmare on wheels. And now that Josh Allen is able to play this way in this offense, and you're seeing him take what's in front of him, make very competent throws, put his receivers in position to run after the catch, and make this offense to the point where they have to decide how they want to play us. And you're starting to see that they were coming up and they were playing to the line, which is allowing our running backs, our wide receivers to kind of sneak out and get behind the defense. It's making this offense very, very potent. You saw Gabe Davis do it. Gabe Davis got behind the safety, went right down the field. You saw James Cook get behind the corner and then make Javon Holland look like he was on ice skates. This offense is really, really interesting because I think that now you're seeing a very complete offense. And not to say that the Bills, when we had Cole Beasley and John Brown, that it wasn't complete, because there was pieces to it that were nice and we could do some things. But the biggest issue was we didn't have a run game. We didn't. I like Devin Singletary. Devin Singletary was a fine running back. Devin Singletary didn't scare anybody. He wasn't going to lower his shoulder, and he wasn't going to burn you. He wasn't going to be able to take it to the house. And Zach Moss was Zach Moss. Now you got guys that can make this offense potent. You have to worry about the run game, and that makes Ken Dorsey's job that much easier because they have to respect the run, which means they can't just sit back and allow Josh to have to figure out how to pass. Now they have to worry about every aspect of the Bills' offense. Beyond that, like Dave Arena said, this offensive line has been unbelievable. And I'll tell you, Cromer deserves all the credit in the world. Deion Dawkins is having some of his best football in his career. Spencer Brown seems to be figuring out whether it's scheme related and they're helping him out, which you're seeing at certain times, or he's just able to hold up enough. And then on top of it, you got Connor McGovern, who they brought in from Dallas, was a priority signing. Mitch Morse, who's healthy. God willing that stays that way because he is so vitally important to Josh, especially now that Josh is playing under center. And then the big guy. I think the guy that really everybody needs to talk about and people are starting to recognize is Osiris Torrance. And if you watch Eric Turner and Anthony Prohaska, you'll see they've talked about him. They've talked about him quite a bit. And one of the things that they've talked about is, man, he is able to hold his ground. His ability to get his legs in the dirt and not allow anybody to push him around is so tremendously impressive, especially for a rookie, and especially for a rookie who's playing against some of the best defensive tackles. Because here's the thing. Let me take a sip of water real quick before. Excuse me. Here's the thing about it. He is playing some of the best defensive tackles in football. So it's not as though this interior of our offensive line has had a cakewalk thus far. They've played some of the best and heaviest hitters in the game. We had Quinnen Williams after week 1, Deron Payne and Jonathan Allen. We had a Raiders defensive line, which had a litany of very talented different options, including Max Crosby. And then this past week against the Miami Dolphins, you had to play Zach Sealer, Christian Wilkins. This is not a walk in the park. These guys have their hands full, and they're doing an unbelievable job. Right now, the Bills are the number 1 team in pass protection. Who would have thought? Who would have thought? I almost want that Paul Rudd meme. Who would have thought? Why? Like, it's crazy to think that at this point we would have had this good of an offensive line, and then even more, like you guys have said in the chat, and I appreciate this, what they've done to the run game cannot be spoken highly enough. I mean, they should be getting their flowers. It's crazy. Excuse me. I sound really gross. I apologize. This cold is kicking my butt. That being said, before I get too deep and continue on, Speaking of Anthony Prohaska, speaking of Eric Turner, or speaking of all our guys, let's talk about Cover One's one pass. Let's talk about Cover One. Oh, look at there you go. There's there's Paul Rudd. Let's talk about the Cover One pass. Let's hear from Eric Turner, or excuse me, Eric Turner, Aaron Quinn, and Greg Thompson.
Many people ask us the best way to support us here at Cover One, and that is to sign up to become a Cover One Pass member. That contribution helps give us the access to all the data and information we use to create the content that you love.
And I think most importantly, brings you into our community of insiders. It's a great community based on Slack. I know a lot of people don't want to be on social media anymore or be in on those conversations. We bring all of it to you right in our great community of educated fans. And most importantly, you get access to our content creators.
Even better than that, everybody loves merch. You get awesome t-shirts, a cool decal, and a letter from the Cover One team signed directly to you.
All for $60. That gets you the entire season, next year's free agency and draft. $60. Click the link in the description. Cover One Insider. Become one today.
That was Aaron Quinn and Greg Thompson, two of our best. You guys know. You guys always they have a fantastic post-game show. They've got their show. Greg's got his show. Guys, I mean, I appreciate you watching with my show, but all of the Cover One content, we are doing everything we can. We are busy all the time delivering in our staff chat. We're trying to drum up new ideas and help each other out with our creative process. But, if you want to help us out, sign up for Cover One Pass. I promise it's well worth your time. Now, I do have some, for anybody who's watched, Buffalo Late Night for a long time, you know that Dr. Kyle Trimble of Banged Up Bills would come out at the beginning of the show. Me moving my show to 7 p.m. He's unfortunately not been as free because he has little kids. So he's been sending me some updates. I missed it last week, but this week I'll give you what Kyle Trimble has to say, Dr. Kyle Trimble, in regards to the injuries. Greg Rousseau is working through a right foot injury. This happened midway through the second quarter when Ed Oliver fell onto his right foot. He can be seen shaking it out, but finished the game, hoping at best for a contusion, but worry for a sprain or potentially even a fracture. I do not see him playing Sunday. Christian Benford took a hard shot to his right shoulder from Raheem Mostert early in the second quarter, was able to return to play after Trey White's injury. This may come down to how much pain he's dealing with, so it's going to be pain management for Christian Benford. Dawson Knox, not much on film. Hopefully he can play Sunday. Feel like he's going to try. Not clear if this is a contusion or a strain. Trey White waiting to go on IR. Horrible blow. Guys, for all of us here at Cover One, I know we all say this, and I'm sure everybody in the chat, prayers up to Trey. I mean, watching him break down like that, his head in his hands. I mean, that for a guy as admirable and as much of a leadership guy and a heartfelt guy, we wish Trey all the best in getting back on the field as soon as possible. In regards, we also have Von Miller, needs more ramp-up time, but with Rousseau being possibly out, roster management demands with Trey going on the IR, it may allow for the easiest transition. He looked good in practice, but that is a quick ramp-up. We could see Von Miller back. I've mentioned that, and I'll mention that in a second when we hit the defensive side of the ball. In regards to the Jags, Zay Jones has missed the last 2 games with a right knee injury. Looks to be improving towards playing. That's a big addition for them. He's been big for their team. Josh Allen's shoulder issues, practice in full on Thursday. So it will be the Josh Allen Bowl, as Justin mentioned. And Dwayne Smoot opened his practice window coming off his Achilles, unlikely to play. So those are the injuries. That's Banged Up Bills. If you want any more of Kyle's stuff, check out bangedupbills.com or on Twitter at bangedupbills. He's fantastic. He delivers awesome content. He's very, very precise and detailed. Love what he does. So make sure you give him a follow on Twitter if you haven't already. Now, in regards to what we were just talking about with defense, guys, this is an interesting matchup for the Bills. They have a ton of weapons on that Jaguars team. Christian Kirk, Zay Jones, if he's coming back, Travis Etienne, Calvin Ridley, like we mentioned. And then obviously, you got Tank Bigsby, their running back, and, Trevor Lawrence, who is an unbelievable quarterback, when everything's going right, can be very deadly. And then on the Bills side with the defense, we're going in a little less healthy than we've had in the past. Obviously, Trey White being out is a big issue. We don't know if Christian Benford's going to play, which means Kyer Elam's probably going to be up. And depending if Christian Benford doesn't play, you might be able to see Jamarcus Ingram up as well. Likely, it's probably going to be Christian Benford and Dane Jackson starting off. I don't think Jordan Poyer will play. It's probably going to be Taylor Rapp again with Micah Hyde, which based off that game in Miami, they did very, very well together. I don't think there was much, if any, drop-off. There might have been actually a pickup in terms of speed. No slack on Jordan, but, he's 33 years old. I'm 35. You just get slower as you get older. It's no slander on the guy. He's a fantastic safety. But I think Taylor Rapp did admirable in his spot. In the defensive line, obviously, we talked about Greg Rousseau. Greg Rousseau not being in that's a big loss, especially for a guy that is stout against the run. A guy that has knocked down passes, has been a real pain in the neck for offensive lines. He's been able to get after the quarterback, has 3 sacks to start the season. I think losing him is going to be tough. Fortunately, you do have Leonard Floyd. Leonard has been unbelievable. One of the best free agent signings I think Brandon Beane has had thus far in his time with Buffalo. And then Von Miller coming back. And guys, man, I don't know. I am so amped to get Von Miller back. We got such a small sample size of him last year. And, you so quickly forget how deadly he is in the pass rush. And even more than that, he's very good against the run. That was one of his calling cards when he played in Denver. Same thing when he was in Los Angeles. I think he's going to be a big piece to this. But the big part about this, this defensive kind of just the abilities is where we've started with our 2 linebackers. Matt Milano is the number 1 linebacker in coverage right now. He's allowing a 20.8 passer rating. And then Terrell Bernard is number 6. What can you not say about Terrell Bernard? The guy has been a magnet for the football. He has been unbelievable in terms of his ability to make defense or make offenses have to really worry about him. He, the one thing in this, again, I don't like to slander other players, but what he does that Tremaine Edmonds couldn't do is his ability to cover in every aspect, his closing speed, his ability to make splash plays, which Tremaine just could never do. How many times did we talk about the ball bouncing off Tremaine's hands because he couldn't catch the interception? Having those 2 out there, Matt Milano and Terrell Bernard, has been invaluable. It has made the defense so much harder to defend and has made Sean McDermott, who people had question marks about with Leslie Frazier leaving, look like an absolute genius. Vic Fangio, right? Sean McDermott is right now probably in the running for Coach of the Year. The guy has been absolutely ice cold, ice in his veins. He has been fantastic to start the season, minus that first game, which was more of a Josh Allen blunder than anybody else. Sean McDermott is allowing 13.8 points per game, which is outside of Dallas's 10, which is ridiculous in and of itself. Number 2 in the NFL, number 1 in turnovers, number 1 in interceptions, number 1 in sacks. This defense is playing with its hair on fire. They are ready to get after it every week. But this is a matchup where you need to be on your game. Mind you, we did play against a very good, team last week, right? A lot of talented weapons. There was a lot of motion, a lot of speed. The difference here is that Trevor Lawrence doesn't have to play in a timing-based offense. He is a very, very talented, meticulous quarterback who can play off platform. He can play outside of the pocket. He can run the scramble drill. He has the ability to make you pay both with his arm and with his legs. He can run. If you've ever watched Trevor Lawrence, he is very talented. And they've got all the weapons. If Calvin Ridley can figure out his hands and get back to that week 1 performance, he is deadly. He is fast. He has got all the intangibles. And then on top of that, Travis Etienne has been a very hot or cold running back. But man, when he is on, he is super deadly. And not only in the running game, but in the screen game. They play a lot of screens in Jacksonville, so that's something that we have to pay attention to. Did very well against the Miami Dolphins. That was a big part of their offense. I think this game is just going to come down to, quite frankly, in all sincerity, I think this is going to come down to is if Josh Allen plays the way he did last week, as good as Jacksonville is, I don't think Jacksonville can keep up with this Bills offense. And I think Josh Allen, the fruit of his labor and seeing that he can now not have to worry about, and I've said this on Twitter, I've said this on Spaces. I think I said this last week. Josh Allen's no longer chasing the deep ball. The deep ball is coming to him. And now that that's happening, he realizes that he can still score 48 points and not feel like he has to do chunk plays. He doesn't, and what Stephon Diggs said to him, you don't have to get it all at once. You don't have to get 60 yards in one play. You can still score points and matriculate down the field. How many times have we talked about on this show and all of Cover One shows, death by 1,000 cuts, right? Death by 1,000 cuts and matriculating down the field and getting the ball in position. This is huge. This is the game where you continue that pathway. And now that Josh Allen is feeling comfort in this offense, he's playing under center. He is a guy that now that if he understands and it's going between the ears that he can play this way, that makes him deadly beyond measure, because you know he can beat you deep. But if he can beat you in the short to intermediate game, it's over. And Josh Allen right now is scoring at more than a 70% clip. They are one of the most deadly red zone offenses against the worst red zone defense. This is a matchup for the Bills that I think, again, if Josh Allen comes in and plays the way he's played, I don't know if there's a team in the NFL presently that can beat this team, because the defense is playing within themselves. And unless the Trey White injury is way more than we're understanding, which is possible, is very, very good. And he played very well against Miami. If this defense continues, this Bills team is very good. And I'll go one further. Excuse me. If this Bills team plays the way it did this week against Miami, it will win the Super Bowl this year. Call that a hot take, record me and send it around. I don't care. This team is that good. Josh Allen is playing measured football. He is staying within the confines of this offense. He is playing a type and a style of football that we have been asking for years, where it's not just Josh Allen, sugar rush, trying to make everything happen on his own. He is allowing the rest of the offense to also be a product of the game. He is incorporating everything. He's not running the ball. He has some of the least running yards so far in his career. He has the least carries to start the season of his career. And yet, they are one of the most potent and deadly offenses of his career. And on top of that, which makes this team even more deadly, not only is Josh scoring at such a high caliber, but now you've got Sean McDermott's defense, which is causing a ton of turnover-worthy plays and turnovers in and of itself. And not only is Josh scoring on his natural possessions, but he's getting additional possessions to then have more opportunities to put points on the board. And teams are having a struggle to stop. So here's the thing, folks. I've said this before and I'll say it again. If Josh Allen plays the way Josh Allen has played in the last 2 weeks, 3 weeks, this Bills defense is going to get very, very good. And spin, I like what you're saying, because I kind of like what I alluded to earlier. We're not there yet. Dalton Kincaid's only played 4 games. 4. He is not where he's going to be. James Cook just started as the lead back, has only played 4 games. He's not where he's going to be. Dawson Knox, I don't think, is fully back to where he is going to be. There are so many elements to this offense that we have not seen yet. Obviously, Ken Dorsey is evolving. We're seeing he's able to figure out what to do to make the best possible offense to put out on the field. If I was the NFL, I would be scared. Hot take, this is the best team in the NFL. This is the best Bills team that we have seen under Brandon Beane and Josh Allen. If you look at how they're doing things right now, they are competent, they're confident, and they're smart. And when you put competent, confident, and smart all together, it makes for a team that is as talented as this very, very difficult to play against. Because you've seen a lot of very talented teams in the past, but they make bonehead mistakes, or they don't play together, or emotions become too high, or whatever, right? You're not running into what we ran into last year with all the emotional trauma, with everything that happened, and I don't want to go into that, but I digress. This team is very talented, and my feeling is if Josh Allen comes out and plays the way he did last week, this game will be over by halftime. I think this game is a opportunity for Josh to continue putting his stamp on the season, to put himself in the conversation for an MVP caliber season, and on top of it, to tell the naysayers that he is not just that guy, he is the guy, and that he is back to being on top of the mountain with Patrick Mahomes. That being said, guys, I truly appreciate you hanging out tonight. This has been a lot of fun. This chat has been banging. You guys are awesome. I'm glad you stuck it with me and kept me going because, man, this cold, whatever this is kicking my rear end. Again, this has been Buffalo Late Night. I am Thomas DeLoss. You can find me on Twitter at the Thomas DeLoss. You can find all of our content on cover1.net. You can find us on Cover One. Make sure you hit that subscribe button, hit that notification button, let us know or let you know every time we go live here on Cover One. I'm gonna say it. I'll say it like I always say it. That was a mouthful. Be kind to each other, guys. Life's too short. Be nice. Call somebody that you love. Tell them you love them. Tell them you miss them. Give somebody a hug. Overall, just be kind. Life's too darn short. Be kind. As for everybody here, Cover One, as for myself, Thomas DeLoss, I appreciate you. We are headed to London. Let's get that dub. Let's get to 4-1. Let's put the NFL on notice. Let's take this league by storm, and let's take that next step on our pathway to finally hoisting the Lombardi this year. Ladies and gentlemen, again, this is Buffalo Late Night. We will see you next week at 7 p.m. See you bright and early, 9:30 in the morning. Let's get some tea and crumpets. Let's have some brunch. Let's go, Buffalo.
The Bills make me wanna. The Bills make me